Give us a.
Hello, welcome to this live broadcast of the MMA Freakcast. I am Matthew Salzer.
I'm Edson Valenzuela.
And we're here to talk about the various topics that have been happening in the MMA industry, as per usual. So we're going to start out with. We're just gonna start up right off the bat. The major event was broadcast of the MMA Freakcast. I am Matthew Salzer.
We can mute that, I'm sure. Edson Valenzuela. And what I'm guessing is that's the rate at which we're broadcasting, which it's getting all this stuff now. So it's gonna hear. It's gonna start out with. We're just mute it. I think it's so that we know, right? That is what it is, right?
Okay.
Technical difficulties.
Our apologies. We were having technical difficulties. This is our first time trying this, in case you couldn't tell.
You can tell.
Okay. So back to business. Our first topic of business, UFC 189. That was a very major event. Oh, and before we get to anything else, speaking of technical difficulties, we'd like to apologize that we couldn't get the previous MMA Freakcast up on time. It was meant to get up on Sunday or Saturday before UFC 189. Unfortunately, due to some technical difficulty, miscommunications, we did not get it up until it was either late Sunday, late Sunday or early Monday. But
sorry, guys.
Yes,
but we're doing it live today.
Yes, and if we ever do it in studio again, we're going to make sure that we get everything straightened out. We actually get things on time. So that was all that being said. Back to UFC 189.
189.
Yes.
Last week.
Yes, last week. So the major events: McGregor versus Mendez.
Starting with the main event.
Yes, starting with the main event: McGregor versus Mendez.
Well, I didn't see that coming. We both talked about it. I don't know if we had a chance. Did you include that with what you posted?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, we were both wrong.
Yeah,
both of us were wrong.
Yeah, we both predicted it was going to be Mendez, and he did get in some ground and pound, but ultimately, McGregor. That's just one of those marks of a true champion. They find ways to win. McGregor, to give him credit, he did have a game plan of getting up off the ground, and then he also had the game plan of actually working, actually being busy off the bottom. He didn't have any submissions. Clearly, that's a problem in his game plan. He probably needs to start working on that. But clearly, he had a game plan and what would happen to him, and he was working towards, working his way out of it. So that was. But yeah, we were both wrong. We both predicted that he was going to go in, that Chad Mendez was going to go in there and dominate for 3 rounds. He did, and dominate and eventually finish it. He did dominate, but McGregor did have his stand-up.
Mendez gassed himself out doing what? Because I was under the impression that he had gassed himself out sort of by the middle of the 3rd round. I don't know if it was a lost guillotine. If you can't tell, I didn't have a chance to watch the fight live.
Oh yeah, he did. Yeah, he did try to go for that.
And of course,
submission. And he did try to go for that submission that may have been a part of it.
Yeah, and that might have been a part of it, or it might have not had anything to do with it. So it's nothing to take away the victory from Conor McGregor. But yeah, like you said, it is sort of. I was very impressed. The way that I saw it was how you described it. In that, like, wow, there's nothing that you could say or do to take away this victory from him, because Chad Mendez, a veteran of MMA, right? He's been sort of one of the name fighters, and was he a champion in the WEC?
He was not a champion in the WEC, but that is where he got his start off.
And Conor McGregor's sort of a relative newcomer, right?
Yeah, he's a relative newcomer. I don't think he fought in any of the classic British promotions like Cage Rage or anything like that.
So it was very impressive.
Yeah, it was.
It was very impressive. And a knockout victory too over Chad Mendes. So now he's the interim champ. Aldo's still the champ. I'm not a huge fan of all the of Dana White sort of making bouts interim championship bouts just because a fighter is going to be injured for more than half a year. I understand that sometimes people don't want to wait to see championship fights, but
the problem with Aldo, he's been out for over half a year. He's been out for 9 months.
Yes.
And by the time the fight comes around, and because they're gonna
it would be another however many 9, so it's gonna total up to more than a year and a half or something like that.
It's gonna be over a year.
Well, I take back what I just said then.
Well, yeah, in that case, yeah, it could definitely be justified. In the case of back when Werdum and Hunt fought for the interim champion, by the time they actually fought, it was over a year. By the time that Kane had been out, so that was also just another justification,
a better reason to sort of do that.
Yeah, if they're gonna be out for almost over a year, then yeah, it's a justification to probably cut them out or not cut them out, but create an interim belt.
I'd say though in the last 3 or 4 years, the amount of champion versus champion bouts have increased if we were to compare it to let's say the last 6 years before then.
I'd agree with you on that.
I should do research on that and maybe write something about it.
Probably.
All right, go on.
Okay, but so there was that fight.
There was another title bout. That was Robbie Lawler versus Rory McDonald, the Canadian.
Yes.
And
it was.
You were right. My prediction on that was Rory McDonald, I think, in 4 rounds.
Yes.
And you had, I think you had Robbie Lawler in 5, so I think you were exactly right, or something like that, right? Or am I swapping?
I predicted it was going to go the distance. It didn't go the distance.
Okay,
it went to the 5th round, but it didn't go distance. It went to where he actually went out there and he actually finished Robbie Lawler, and he made him look like he'd been through a meat grinder.
McDonald.
Yeah,
he finished McDonald.
He finished McDonald, and he made him just look like he went through a meat grinder. His face, if you've seen post-fight pictures, his face is just all swollen up like he had some kind of allergic reaction or something.
Robbie Lawler's always been sort of a tough boxer, right? Hard puncher.
Yeah, he's been definitely a hard fighter.
I haven't seen very many of McDonald's fights. Is he a wrestler or a kickboxer?
I'd say he's more of a kickboxer.
Okay.
He's more of a stand-up guy.
Okay.
But he definitely can do a little bit of a ground game, but he's definitely more of a stand-up guy. And Lawler also being primarily a stand-up guy, but having a wrestling background, that definitely came into play. So it was a good fight overall.
Was this Lawler's first fight since winning the title against Hendricks?
Yes, this is his first title defense.
And it's interesting then, you could say how the welterweight division has shifted towards, because Hendricks is a nice, I think, blend, right? A nice, well-rounded fighter, most definitely. His wrestling is top-notch.
His wrestling is his bread and butter.
But he likes to stand up and bang. I feel like he's somebody who might benefit from sticking to the game plan of getting him to the ground and wearing them out more. The fight with Robbie Lawler, I think, I don't remember that. And that was a close one. And we talked about it before where I think you thought Hendricks won. I think actually everybody thought Hendricks won that fight, right?
Yeah.
So, again, though, it's interesting to see how the welterweight division has shifted from my pillow's showing. Give me a sec. Has shifted from predominantly wrestling champions or predominantly wrestling or grappling dominant sort of fighters in the welterweight division being pretty much, let's say Matt Hughes and GSP. And you could also say that definitely. During their heyday, other sort of name fighters were BJ Penn, let's say, for the little bit that he did a couple of welterweight bouts. And
he actually remember, he actually took the belt from Matt Hughes. Mm-hmm.
So those middle sort of welterweight sized dudes typically have been the shorter, stockier, strong wrestlers. So it's fun to see those guys now bang it out, right? Stand in the middle of the ring and really just sort of go at it with one another. The boxing, it really, with Robbie Lawler especially, I feel like you're pretty much just watching a boxing fight. He's not really, he'll mix in some kicks, I think, often, but he's not really going to be a guy that's going to try and throw a head kick at you to try to really knock you out that way. Not really.
That's not his goal. That's definitely not his goal.
Both champions retain their time. One champion retained, and we have a new interim champion.
Yes,
that's awesome. That's a 2-championship fight night right there, right?
Yep. And Just another thing about that night. That was
189.
it was the introductory. It was the introductory event for the UFC uniforms.
So that was the first night that anybody that wasn't a champion was sort of made to wear what Reebok.
No, that was where everyone.
Everybody?
Yes, everyone, even the champions. So yeah, everyone went out there. Everyone wore uniforms. But I have to say, I'm disappointed. I didn't look too much at when they revealed the fight kit, because they actually did a reveal before the actual event. But I have to say, I was disappointed. Those things just looked dull. That's the best way I could use to describe those uniforms. They are dull with a capital D. They're just boring. They're black and white, and the variation just is not that good in them. And it's just like, this is the best you could come up with?
What I was thinking and what I'm guessing is eventually they're going to have standards. Let me, and maybe I haven't, and I need to read more about it. So they're, so their uniform has zero sort of logo on it, or what logo does it have on it? UFC.
It's got UFC and Reebok, but I noticed for like the co-main and main event fighters, they had Monster in there. I don't know if that means that they get extra money from Monster, but yeah. But honestly, those for those main event fighters, the Monster logo actually made the uniform look good. Because it was, like I said, it was just dull. The names didn't really stick out to me because they had the fighters' names on those uniforms, but the names just didn't stick out to me. The color schemes they tried to use, it just did not work out. But when it comes to those main event fighters where they actually had the Monster logo, it was just like, oh my gosh, this is a breath of fresh air. There's some diversity in here because, Monster uses that bright neon green type. And it was just like, oh my gosh, this is actually something.
You prefer like an artistic element to the uniforms, or whatever.
Something like that. But another thing that I do believe that actually looked good, Robbie Lawler's uniform was actually slightly different. Instead of having like a black and white or white and black, diversification in there, it was black and gray, with gold name on it. I actually like that. That actually looked good. I think they need to go with something along that. And I can't remember who it was from Reebok, but the person responsible for the designs in that actually did say that they're going to change the uniform eventually, but they're not going to do it for a few years because they want to give fans time to be able to buy these jerseys and whatnot. So, but I think they need to go in that direction because those uniforms actually look good. I think they need to probably include more Monster in there. More of the Monster logo in there because they just need diversity because otherwise this thing just looks dull. I said.
What I'm guessing is eventually they're going to probably allow for them to maybe design certain uniforms or shorts within standards, right? And also, what it sounds like, if Robbie Lawler, and this is speculation at this point, if Robbie Lawler had a set of trunks that were different or designed differently from others, maybe it'll be a tier sort of situation where it's like, all the just the fighters that are non-championship fighters on the roster are gonna have to wear this sort of uniform, and then it's like like you mentioned, maybe the two main event fighters wear a certain uniform, and then the champion gets to maybe have a special whatever design for the champion. What I would prefer is if they had, even for the fighters, multiple choices of colors or designs, and then let's say there's 5 different shorts. So that's better than the one, and they could all be Reebok shorts with the same generic design, but instead of black and white, let's say, oh, that one's yellow and blue. This one's green and red. That one, whatever it might be. It could be the same design, but I think even that might make it a little bit more interesting because, for me personally, one of the most entertaining things about boxing is when the guys come in with their cool, funky, different trunks. When they come in, there'll be there was old fighter Maromero Pais. He used to come out with these big, long, baggy trunks that had tassels along the side. Or Hasim Ahmed used to come out with these leopard print trunks, dude, that just looked like so illustrious and made out of suede, and they like shined, And it's it adds to the personality of the fighter, you know, or it adds to the showmanship of the fight, right? We're watching it to be entertained, right? So that's interesting. Interesting little quibble you have with the uniforms.
Yeah, I was tempted until I read that they're eventually going to change it. I was tempted to like tweet Dana White and say,
You should have.
Yeah,
You should have.
I was tempted. Yeah, I
You
was
have to
tempted
do
to
it.
just straight up tweet Dana White. Look, I could come up with a better design than these guys. Let me do the better design. Reebok can take credit for it. Just let me do something to make this just not look so dull. This looks dull. It's yeah.
You should have. You should have. I think you should have. Next time, do so.
Maybe I could still do that, but if they said they're going to change the uniform, I'm going to assume that they're going to actually change the uniform. But you know, when the original idea of the uniform came up, I thought that it was going to be a variation of the blue and red corner. I thought that one person was going to wear a red uniform and the other was going to read a blue uniform. I wasn't expecting this.
That would be similar to like the Ultimate Fighter.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting this like weird black or weird
black and white.
Weird, it's black and white or white and black color variation going on here. Speaking of which, I'm hoping that when fighters actually do fight in the UFC from the Ultimate Fight, and I didn't watch the Ultimate Fighter finale.
Oh goodness!
But, I'm hoping that. I'm hoping that when they do that, they actually do allow the fighters to still wear the uniforms of the team that they represented. Maybe that way it could still differentiate that they're
from the Ultimate Fighter.
Yeah, they're still the Ultimate Fighter going into the UFC. Hopefully, we'll see how. Like I said, apologies, didn't watch the Ultimate Fighter finale. I should probably go back and see if they actually did that. But in all honesty, I wasn't that thrilled about the event. There wasn't really a big main eventer, and it just...
That might segue for us to be able to discuss something really quickly, and I don't know if it's something that you had lined up, but that might segue into just sort of what we were discussing just before we started, and that's the... and this is an issue I think that's not new for anybody who's an MMA fan and who's been following the sport in the last few years, and that's that there's a degree of and we're not saying anything new. There's a degree of oversaturation of the market as far as mixed martial arts and what we can have available to us, say on television.
I would say specifically where the UFC is concerned.
Yes.
You know, before the Fox deal, they're putting out events at least once a month. Fight night events were starting to pick up a little bit, but yeah, they were starting to put fights. But once the UFC deal, the UFC Fox deal kicked in, they started watching. They started coming out with multiple events a month, especially when Fox Sports 1 started up.
And I'm guessing the Fox deal happened not too long before or after the UFC absorbed all of WEC's smaller roster, the smaller fighters on their roster.
Yeah, it started probably about right at.
And so then as a result, they have a new deal, right? They have this extended roster.
I think it happened 2010 and 2011. That's when they inked the deal. I don't think it actually went into effect until about 2012. But
it was that sort of. It was early 2010 was when when that they sort of started really picking up. Then, right?
Yes, that's so.
And now you got one twice a weekend sometimes. Once every week at least.
Yeah, once a week, twice a week. They'll sometimes be off weeks, but yeah, for the most part, yeah, they're having to chug out events.
There was a time 10 years ago where you and I would have wanted that, right? Like there was a time where we were just, kind of newer MMA fans, or we loved the sport at a time where we're like, oh man, like I wish there was maybe a little bit more of this waiting a month. But it's one of those, be careful what you wish for.
Yeah, exactly. But, yeah, I think I would have been better with maybe like 2 events a month, but now we're seeing all these events a month, and they're having to stretch their roster very thin.
That is the exact issue with making that many events at a time.
Honestly, I was looking, and the thing, is what the average person weighs. I was looking at the UFC roster. I think their biggest division is the welterweight division, and it's not small. I'd almost argue it's got over 50 guys in there. It's seriously huge. It's just inflated because that's just how big the average person is. Apparently, worldwide. Apparently, the average athlete they're going to be about. They're going to be and within that range.
And also, this is just presuming all of this as well. I have the feeling that a lot of the young men that find success in grappling or in wrestling aren't really the tall dudes. They're going to be sort of the more average sized dudes that do wrestling in high school or that do grappling and that find success in it, I think.
Yeah, like when I was wrestling and when I wrestled in college, I was, they for my weight class, they probably weren't. I'd say for my weight class, they weren't. I wrestled 133, 140. They were probably about my height, maybe.
And just so you all know, Matt's about what? How tall are you, Matt? Tell them.
Like about 5'4", 5'3". So and even 125 pounders, they're probably around that height range. They're just not that tall.
Mm-hmm.
Not to mention there was also there was a time when guys would cut massive amounts of weight. Like back before there was certification regulation, I watched the finals for back when they had like a 119 weight class or something like that. These guys were huge.
And they were just like starving themselves and not drinking any water the day before.
Yeah, stuff like that. And I was just like, oh my gosh, this is what it used to look like. But yeah, there's these
competition's nasty.
But yeah, there's these regulations now, at least in wrestling.
And it's to keep you safe, right? It's to keep the person from doing something stupid like that.
Which something that our good writer Tom Heffernan has constantly brought up.
Hey Hef.
Yeah, Hey Hef, who's also actually, as we speak, is currently covering
Is he covering Glasgow right now?
Yeah, he's covering Glasgow right now.
Thanks, Hef.
Yep. Thanks. Yeah, thanks for being the first MMA freak fighter to cover a UFC event. Yeah. Yeah, it's the first one of us ever to cover a UFC event because none of us can get into those events.
I'm afraid of flying. I mean, I wouldn't not do it. I'm just scared of it.
You're like my girlfriend.
Is she scared of the flying?
Yeah, she's more. It's more of a fear of heights than anything else.
Yeah, and you're really high up when you're flying.
Yeah, you're like 20,000 feet or something like that. I don't have an issue flying, but but
it's absolutely necessary. Not to go on too hard of a tangent about flying. You gotta fly. Because you gotta see the world, But my goodness, it's horrifying. I've only done it the one time.
Where?
Florida.
Okay.
It was super hot over there, humid, but it was actually I didn't freak out or nothing. It was fine. I took the window seat. It was beautiful.
Yeah, I've been to Florida once.
How old were you?
I was still in high school. I was looking at a college to possibly go to wrestle at, which ultimately didn't work out because the coach left and they cut their program.
Oh gosh, sorry.
Yeah, amazing how things worked out. I ended up in Missouri instead, but
not bad.
Oh, I wouldn't trade for anything. But anyways, so where were we?
So we just finished talking about we talked about
UFC Glasgow,
and just sort of you talked about how there's so many there we have oversaturated we weren't able to catch the finale.
We've oversaturated the division the oversaturation of the UFC events. But yeah, they've had to incorporate a whole slate of fighters, but at the same time they're spreading their roster thin and they aren't able to put so many putting enough big names together on a fight card is actually pretty rare nowadays.
Mm-hmm. And it's on purpose, I think, because it's like, why are we going to use this marquee fighter, or rather these three at once, when we could just as easily generate buzz for three individual fight cards by using each one of them and not having anybody else of interest on those cards? And that, to me, is sort of what I'd always, and it still sort of differentiates boxing from mixed martial arts in that, to me, and I felt a lot more strongly about this before, on any given MMA card, you're going to see one or two or three fighters that you really enjoy watching fighting. On any boxing card, you're going to only give a crap about the main event, the two guys that are fighting, right? And
like Pacquiao.
yeah, and that's only and on top of it, that's only going to happen once every 6 months because there's not really that very many interesting guys in boxing.
Yeah, whereas in the UFC, they're actually trying to put named fighters on every single fight card.
So problem now though is what I'm noticing is there are name fighters, but it's kind of only, it's not like boxing in that they have a lot of events like we mentioned, but it is like boxing more so now in that they have name fighters that kind of drift towards the top of the card, and everybody else are people, since like you mentioned, they have so many fighters on the roster that they're new guys that I'm getting acquainted with, but that aren't exactly name fighters that are really popular.
Yeah, the fight nights definitely, and even to a degree the pay-per-view prelims, those are basically, rising star events or what those are. You got the main fighters who are anchoring the event, for whatever, like Henderson versus Bosch, those, whoever they're using to anchor the fight card. But most everyone else are pretty much prospects who are still trying to make their names in the fight game, and it's just they're definitely spreading themselves thin there. And, whereas other organizations like Bellator and World Series of Fighting, they're actually still doing that smart thing where they're still only having events they're still having events once a month and stuff like that. Ever since Bellator, scrapped their seasonal format, they're having these once a month, fights where they're putting good name fighters on there, and then of course they have these big events every 3 or 4 months where like Kimbo Slice versus Ken Shamrock, where they're having big name fighters and stuff like that. But
do their best to generate a buzz for their organization.
Yeah, that's what they're. Speaking of which, if you really think about it, I was reading this one article a while back on Yahoo about how Bellator's strategy actually is what made the UFC change their strategy, if you really think about it. And here's what how the
break it down for me.
Yeah, here's how the strategy changed. They went from basically holding on to fighters until until at most they lost 3 or 4 fights and then letting them go. That was the strategy until Tito Ortiz versus Stephan Bonner. That fight happened. Bellator, that event, in addition to going head-to-head with a UFC pay-per-view and a World Series of Fighting event, killed every single MMA event that fall. It was the most watched fight by the promotion up until that fall. And they, considering all the fight cards the UFC had put on, they beat each one of them.
That's impressive.
After that, their strategy changed. They went from, letting go fighters after 3 or 4 fights to holding on to fighters. That's why Frank Mir was given another chance even after he lost 4 or 5 fights. That's why they held on to Dan Henderson.
That's why they signed Rampage
from Bellator.
I see the point you're making. Yes.
And then also that's why they signed that. After that, they signed CM Punk.
So if what you're saying, if I'm picking up what you're putting down, what you're saying essentially is Bellator gained some ground on them. However, right, Bonner and Tito Ortiz, they were able to generate enough buzz that they gained some ground on them as far as viewership. Yeah. So then Dana White, whoever else is in charge of maintaining the roster at the UFC, went, oh crap, if we start letting these guys go at the rate at which we were letting them go before, even if they're sucking, if there's somebody that they can take the name away from us, we're in trouble. So we're going to hold on to some of these guys, even if they're not doing great. The guys you mentioned specifically, Mir, Henderson, those are 2 guys who are ex-champions of the UFC, who are still going to be named fighters that UFC or the MMA fans will be able to recognize. If they go over to Bellator, that's going to get them a few more eyes, right?
Yeah.
So that's what you're saying. They might trying to be avoiding. They might be trying to avoid that.
Yeah, exactly that. And I forget who wrote this article, but that's definitely.
Do you remember what site it was?
Like I said, it was Yahoo Sports.
Okay.
Which I definitely can agree with that prospect, because, like I said, they did all that. They, like I said, they said Rampage. It might have been CM Punk.
Kevin Iole, I think he's like the MMA guy.
Yeah. And like I said, they also signed CM Punk, and then not too long ago they signed Mirko Krokop. He he retired after his last loss in the UFC, and then and he went straight to kickboxing. But then after dabbling in kickboxing a little bit, he decided, I'm going to start dabbling in MMA again, and he won like 3 out of 4.
Japan?
Yeah, in Japan primarily, but he actually did, even though there weren't a lot of prospects to fight, he actually did pretty well. And then
he's still an elite. He still was an elite striker once upon a time.
Yeah, but the thing that caused the UFC to sign him again, Bellator started talking to him.
That's good. It's this sort of competition that is going to sort of make the sport more interesting, hopefully. And I think I'll say this, and this will be sort of my 2 cents on Bellator specifically. Any MMA fan who hasn't had a chance to do it yet, visit Bellator's YouTube page. They actually have almost, I think it must be from the amount of content that I've been able to watch. They have recaps, I think, on every single event and every single fight, and they're video recaps that include every important moment in the fight. And it'll be synthesized into 20-second clips that, will include a knockout or maybe the highlights of a decision. The idea being that easily accessible for any MMA fan to just go on YouTube, go to their page, and see what's been happening on their organization. UFC, good luck, right? Either you have to catch it recorded on your DVR.
Well, because they're putting a heavy emphasis on the UFC Fight Pass.
Yeah, or you have to pay, and it's behind a paywall, and that's not
you'll
cool.
essentially see you'll occasionally see stuff on the UFC's YouTube or the Fox Sports YouTube and stuff like that, but it's not all of it is readily available. Yeah,
exactly. Not all of it is readily available.
Yeah, whereas as you just said,
in Bellator, I'm telling you, and it's great. It's an HD. It's like it's their official site, and it's got everything.
Yeah, they'd rather
they want people to see this.
Yeah, they want people to see this stuff, and they also by putting it out there, they don't they're reducing the likelihood that it's going to be pirated. With UFC, there's still a chance that something can be pirated, and of course, the UFC is doing this big old, fight against piracy campaign and stuff like that. But there's definitely all those implications there. So
I would never stream a fight.
I would never. Never
neither would I.
Yeah, but anyways, so okay, we've talked about quite a bit. Okay, so one thing I want to talk about, we mentioned the Ultimate Fighter briefly. At the Ultimate Fighter finale, they mentioned who the coaches for the next.
I heard this. They're not fighting each other.
Yeah.
It's McGregor. No, I have it wrong.
Yeah. Yes, McGregor.
Oh, okay. Then McGregor and Faber.
Yes.
Okay.
So, I find that a little interesting that they're putting them up against each other and not fighting them. But the idea is still that they want McGregor to face Aldo at the end of the around the time that filming ends, and which would be in December.
And I'm guessing also barring, I'd heard that as well, that it's not going to in any way, shape, or form hinder the title fight between him and Aldo.
Yeah.
But I would, I'll bet anything on that win or lose McGregor after that fight. Because knowing McGregor, I don't think he's going to not be very annoying to Uriah Faber during that season.
Which
they're going to have a rivalry no matter what. As soon, when that season ends, I'm just very confident of it.
Yeah, though. I don't think I don't think it's very likely that they're ever actually going to face each other. There's definitely going to be a rivalry, but I don't think it's likely they're ever going to face each other.
Is Faber staying at 155 these days or something, or
135? You mean?
That's
where he is. That's where he is.
And McGregor's
the last time
McGregor's 145, right?
Yeah, he did fight at 145 recently, but it was against Frankie Edgar and he lost. So I don't think Edgar is like in the 2 or 3 rank spot right now.
Yeah,
so
Faber's not a guy who's he's
been around and stuff like that.
So
but
he'll take a big fight if he can, right?
Yeah, but I don't. You have to try and build some kind of possibility, some kind of a case for a title shot. And if he just lost, first of all, his teammate lost, and he lost to the number 2 or 3 guy in the division,
they might not want to scooch him into that fight.
I don't think so. But anyways, but Also the Ultimate Fighter 20 season 22 is also going to be unique in that it's going to they're doing that team format again, so team versus team, but it's going to be specifically European fighters led by McGregor versus American fighters versus led by Faber. Now, obviously, they've done something similar to
the
this.
Bisping Henderson season.
Yes, that season for the main Ultimate Fighter. They've been doing this for regional versions of the show for a very long time. They did UK versus, I think, Australia, and I think they did Canada versus Australia, and then they also did it for the Latin America version of the show. Over the main implications that I see right here, I'd actually heard quite a few months ago, this may have even been last year, that the UFC was exploring possibly creating a European version of the show. Obviously, this is what they finally decided to go with.
So this is going to be their but it's not really a European version of the show, right? Because it's going to be both, right?
They decided to take that concept and merge it with the main Ultimate Fighter. They're going to have these, they're going to have European fighters going against the American fighters. Now, whether we see the same quality, I'm not completely sure, because even though Dan Henderson, smashed Michael Bisping in the coaches fight, the actual season of that show was won by the UK fighters. Now, yes. whether that was because the talent pool was just weak that season, I'm just not completely sure. But that's
that was Ross Pearson and who else?
Ross Pearson and
goodness. I know what divisions were. That'll help us narrow it down.
I'd like to
this
say,
is embarrassing.
I'd like to say it was welterweight. Rob Sinclair. I don't think it was Rob Sinclair.
Ross Peterson. We know that. Well, what I'm saying is it was two, right? Or was it?
Yeah, it was.
But we know one.
Yeah. So,
all right, go on.
Well, that just shows how forgettable when half of that show was.
This is true.
Yeah.
But I mean, again, so if you're describing it, if I'm picking up what you're putting down, they're creating a new brand, but starting it by integrating it with another brand, and then maybe they might run with it as a standalone after the first season. Is that kind of what it is?
That's probably what's going to happen.
It's going to be our 22nd season of The Ultimate Fighter and their first season of their Ultimate Fighter. And then we're gonna have our own, and then they might have their own afterwards.
Yeah, it may spin off afterwards.
Okay.
Well, if you really think about it, Brazilians had been appearing in the Ultimate Fighter before the Ultimate Fighter Brazil showed up, but they never actually had a Team Brazil.
Yeah, no. I mean, most seasons of the Ultimate Fighter had been just a variety of fighters from all around the world in a house.
Primarily Americans.
For whatever. Primarily Americans, but for whatever weight division that they were in.
Yeah. Or divisions.
But there were fighters every now and then that were international fighters, right? I guess I'm blanking right now. But
Michael Bisping was the first one.
Okay, there you go.
He was there have been Ultimate international fighters before them, but he was the first major star because he won. He
won the third season.
Third season. He was the first guy to win the third season.
Yeah.
At light heavyweight, and then he eventually dropped down because he started to realize that he was
maybe not suited for that.
He was light for the division.
Mm-hmm. His frame is he's not the tallest dude either.
He's a middleweight.
Yeah.
He's a middleweight. He went into does happen in seasons of the Ultimate Fighter. He went a division above what he should have been fighting. But I think the talent pool was kind of weak in the UK at the time. He was just that just goes back to him being a bigger fish in a weaker pond.
I serve tables at a restaurant. I served Michael Bisping. He was nice.
Oh yeah, you told me about that because he does live in Anaheim.
Yeah.
Okay, so. Definitely. Obviously, they're putting Conor McGregor in there because they're trying to ride off of his fame there. Oh, and just going back briefly to UFC 189, there was this for the intros of the main event. They did something I've not seen at a UFC event I don't think I've ever seen it at a UFC event. They had actual singers singing the intro music of the fighters. They've occasionally had stage shows for the UFC, like the fight where Hughes took the belt from Newton is the only example.
Wow, that's a really long time ago, though. That's a really long time.
Yeah, they did stage shows, but I've never seen them actually have singers sing the main event intro music until this event. And it wasn't just they just had someone singing. They had someone singing with a fog machine going and the lights, the fog machine.
That's odd.
And
why would that have been?
I think that was specifically because I think it was partially to capital. It was UFC International Fight Week #1, and then #2 it was Conor McGregor.
So you think that specifically that degree of showmanship is something that Conor McGregor's fans might enjoy seeing?
Yeah, well, specifically they got for his walkout, they got an Irish singer singing it was probably an Irish song because I've never heard of it before.
This is not untypical of fighters in boxing. This actually happens pretty regularly in boxing. You'll have like a boxer come out with a rapper rapping his way to the whatever, or you'll have the Mexican fighters will do the mariachi in the ring while they're walking to the ring, and it's live with trumpets or violins or guitars going, and I've that's again, but for the UFC. Yeah, that's strange. I think that would have been a strange sight for me. I think that if I would have seen that, it would have been. And we've also
seen that in other promotions. Other promotions have done.
Well, Megadeth was at the Affliction. It was at the Affliction show.
Yeah,
playing live.
And then they had some showmanship for Bellator Unfinished Business when Ken Shamrock walks in. They had Road Warrior. Was it? Whichever one Road Warrior is still alive right now, but they had him walk in,
Animal.
Animal, face paint, the mohawks up, comes in with the pads, and he's his intro music comes right before Ken Shamrock's, and they kind of have him come out with all his grandchildren because he's a grandfather. They have him come out with all his grandchildren in tow, and they're just trying to make a big show out of this. So that's Bellator, but obviously there's definitely showmanship.
But this was strange for you to see.
It was strange for me to see for a UFC event, definitely. But and I have no idea if they're gonna make this they're probably not gonna make this a standard. But I'd imagine that this isn't the last we've seen of something like that.
If it's a situation where it's because Conor McGregor has enough influence because he's bringing enough eyes to the sport, who's to say that there's another guy down the line that doesn't go, hey. I want Seal to sing from the rafters as I come out, and I want the spotlight on him, not on me.
Yeah, I should mention that Chad Mendes also had
live music.
Yeah, but this guy was a country guy, so I don't know if
people like country. It's become more and more pop. You like it? I don't like it as much.
I like certain country songs, But anyways, so that was just that little bit. Okay, so we talked about UFC 189, talked about the UFC uniform, talked about
we sort of talked about the finale. Who won the finale? We should say who won the finale. We didn't even know.
Kareem Usman.
Okay.
He was representing.
Oh yes, what is he? He's like a. What is he?
Black Zillion. He represents the Black Zillion. The American Top Team won the team competition, but the finale winner was a
Brazilian. Okay,
no.
But
he's actually from Africa,
and that's what I was wondering. Yeah,
well, the Black Zillions aren't made up of solely Brazilians.
Yeah, it's just
Brazil.
Now wait, I'm confused. Are they not comprised of solely Brazilians, but are they comprised of solely Black people and Brazilians? Is that really what it is?
That's primarily how they got their name.
No.
Because they looked at, I forget which guy looked at the roster, but a guy looked at the roster. It was like,
you guys are Black and Brazilian.
No, well, he was on the roster and said, we are Black. And that's how they got their name. Well, remember, officially, they're the Jocko Training Center.
I thought they were also, weren't they, before that too, weren't they Black House? Wasn't that them? It was like
no,
Machida, Silva.
Is
that a different thing?
There was a Black House, but it was completely separate.
Okay, then.
Black House existed. I'm not
that
sure.
was Paulo Filho, Machida, Silva, Murilo Bustamante. Pretty much Brazilian Brazilian top team split up, and guys that did not want to be part of Brazilian top team anymore became Black House. That's how I remembered it, and then I thought Brazilians were them.
Actually there were some Brazilian top team, American top team is actually split off of Brazilian top team.
But
so is Black House.
Okay, yeah.
So it was Black House. It was kind of a two-way split, and I think Brazilian top team still technically exists, but it's a shell of what it used to be. Back when it's a shell of back when the Nogueiras.
But before it was Shootbox and Brazilian top team were the only two that anybody cared about really, right? Like
the two Brazilian
camps
teams.
That were big, you know.
Yeah. So
okay, so say his name one more time.
Kareem Usman.
Okay.
He was the Ultimate Fighter.
175 welterweight? Is that he looked
170
beefy.
170.
Yeah, my apologies. I got that wrong.
So that was the Ultimate Fighter for now. He had to beat Haider Hassan.
I saw that he beat him down, didn't he?
Yeah.
Knocked him out, didn't he?
Yeah, he beat Haider.
Yes.
Yeah, he beat Haider Hassan.
Impressive.
Haider's actually I forget which nation he is, but he's Arabic. He's of the Arabic.
He's an Arab.
Yeah, he's from one of the Arab. Well, not only that, he's Muslim. I've never seen a Muslim MMA fighter.
There has to be one. Give me a minute. We don't know if he's what's his face was born in Iran. I don't know if he's
Mousasi is Musa. He's actually Christian.
There you go. Then yeah,
he's ethnically actually Armenian. He was from an Armenian family.
Understood.
Born in Iran. And he has Dutch citizenship.
Yes. But he's a citizen of the world, really.
Yeah,
just like any of us.
Yeah, but speaking of, so moving on from the Ultimate Fighter to that part of the world, the news that has been going around the internet is that of the return of the last emperor to MMA. Oh
yes, you mentioned this to me. You sent me a text message earlier this week. Fedor Emelianenko returning to the sport of mixed martial arts. Yes. How do you feel? How old is he? 35?
He's like 38, actually.
You can't count anybody out. Brandon Couture showed us many things in our life.
That is true. He could be able to pull a Randy Couture on us and be able to become a champion at what would be considered a later age. But I was thinking, he went out on a win after he lost in Strikeforce, and when Global set him up with these has-beens, and he went on 2-fight win streak. Yeah, that'd probably be a better way to describe it. Yeah, Jeff Monson and Pedro Hizzo just never.
That Pedro Hizzo fight was so sad. My gosh.
I'm still wondering, what did anyone actually see in Pedro Hizzo? But then again, I also knew what
he was one of the biggest names ever. When the UFC started, he was huge because the whole Valetudo thing and Marco Ruas, people dug it because the whole idea was he could knock you out. And I think people were sort of sick of seeing everybody being submitted. And I think that his whole thing with his fight against Josh Barnett was, holy moly, these guys are beating each other's butts. And that was when the UFC only had the fighters that were in the UFC. That was the only MMA that was available to U.S. audiences.
Oh, yeah, that's true. But,
But, I mean, he was already like 40 by the time he fought Fedor, and he had already been knocked out several times at that point in his career, so he was knockout prone.
Yeah, Barnett avenged his loss.
Yes, in brutal fashion.
At Affliction, I watched both Affliction events, and I saw him. He hits him, and he just goes.
It's so terrible. Goodness gracious.
Yeah.
And did you ever see the knockout with Fedor's stablemate from Red Devil, Roman Sensov? That is a left hook that he absolutely crushed him with, Matt. We have to watch it after we're done. And it's just like, poor guy. Anyway, continue. Yeah, so they set up Fedor against all these nobodies. He went out on a win, but really, he went out on a loss. we're talking about fights that mattered, it was like the only fight that, the 3 fights that mattered in the U.S. in the organizations over here, he lost those, in a row.
Well, if you're talking his last 3 name fights, then yeah, you lost those. But he won more than a few fights in the U.S. and he was still definitely a top. At when
the way that I saw it was, even with those 3 losses, I sort of viewed him as a little bit of a quitter, because it was the way that I thought was, okay, he was one of my favorite fighters at the time. It's like, you lost this many times. This happens in MMA. People go on losing streaks in MMA. But I don't, you don't tuck tail and go back to your organization that you run, that you can make money off of, and put yourself in crappy fights.
Well, here's the thing. The decision really wasn't his to make on whether he wanted to continue or not. That was back when it was. Well, remember, Strikeforce at the time, Zuffa owned, and it transitioned during his losing streak. He lost to Doom, then Zuffa bought Strikeforce, and he lost to
Bigfoot,
and then he lost to Dan Henderson. And I've seen some complaints about people saying, he lost to a middleweight, but Dan Henderson,
he's always been a rover.
Yeah, he's not only been a rover, he's actually given more than a few heavyweights a run for their money.
Yeah.
He beat Big Nog once.
Yeah.
So, but after that, he got cut from. Dana White made the decision, you're done. He got cut from Strikeforce. So the decision wasn't made for him, and there really wasn't anyone big at. No, there weren't really any other big organizations at the time for him to go to. Dream was withering away. What other organization? Bellator was still in it was still in its infancy, still going through that tournament format, stuff like that. So
how I perceived it, though, was he probably would have been able to restructure some sort of deal with the UFC, because he's still Fedor. People still would have known who he was. I don't think he would have taken less money, which I'm sure Dana White would have been happy to be like, this is the amount of money that you're going to make from now on, because you lost these fights. If you're going to fight for us, this is the amount of money you're going to make. And that he didn't feel like doing that, though the official story was exactly what you just said. The official story was that it was Dana White cut him. He couldn't really find any MMA organizations over here that would interest him. But at the same time, M1, again, he's sort of part owner of M1, right?
Yeah, he is a part owner.
So he knew that if he went to an organization that he ran himself, and he could put himself in those fights against. He could do 2 things, really. He could control the amount of income that he's making, because he's putting on these promotions himself, and he could control the talent of that's placed across from him, so that maybe he wasn't gonna go to a 4, 5, 6, 7 lose streak. Not to say that that's what would have happened.
Well, here was another part of the problem. By the time he got he returned to M1. There really wasn't anyone to fight, because by that time the UFC had signed all the major heavyweights,
and that's why they were paying these sort of these
has-beens.
Yeah. So what's the plan? M1 still?
My understanding is he actually wants to go to. My understanding is that he actually wants to go to a bigger name promotion. He's actually been
either Bellator or the UFC, and I'm a happy camper. What do you think?
I think it's probably going to be one of those 2 options, though, in all honesty, judging from it depends on who's doing the negotiating. If it's his manager,
Finkel, oh my gosh, I have not thought about this. Finkelstein, I think.
Yeah, if it's Vladim Finkelstein, the guy who's doing his management before, who just nuked his chances at
he was
getting into the UFC, then we're not gonna. I don't see him going to the UFC. He's going to end up in Bellator, where I could see them throwing him some freak show.
And without being too much of an apologist, we don't know if Dana White's a pain in the ass, even though he is the guy with the leverage. We don't know if he makes it impossible. But I guess here's the impression that I always got was that that Fedor and his people just didn't want to be pushed around, and Dana White has placed himself in a position with this sport that you kind of have no choice but to let him do what he wants with you if you're going to make money for yourself and for him.
Well, yeah. Well, another thing that I understand is that is that Dana was actually at the time was actually willing to bend over backwards. He was willing to match him up against Brock Lesnar at Cowboy Stadium, and they were both gonna get like $1 million paydays. He was gonna allow him to come in with M1 Global shorts, everyone Global banners. He's gonna let him just do this whole shindig. He was willing to go the whole mile, except for making a co-promotion with M1 Global. But I also heard there was also this one ridiculous commission of you have to like build a stadium in Russia or something like that. I was just like, are you kidding?
Yeah. Okay, so then
I understand.
I don't put that past them. Go on.
Yeah, I understand that there were these little it's like there were these little demands where it's like, I'm willing to do this, I'm willing to do this. I'm not willing to do that. And that's just what made or broke the deal, is my understanding.
And I'll make this very quick correction. I think his first name is Vadim.
Vadim.
So Vadim Finkelstein.
Yeah.
That's the guy who we have to thank for this. So if that guy's still in charge of Fedor's career, maybe keep him away for the meanwhile. And let's get him over here. Let's get him in a real, organization. Without sounding too hoity-toity, it's the truth, right? I mean, let's get him somewhere where he's going to fight people that we care about, and there's still interesting fights that could be made with him. I think 38 by no means is over the hill.
Yeah,
I really do mean it.
As you pointed out, Randy Couture did surprise everyone when he came out of retirement.
Some talent is sort of, timeless. Or
yeah. Well, that also reminds me of, back when Michael Jordan came out of retirement twice. Granted, he didn't win any the third time he came out of retirement.
When he was playing with the Wizards, it wasn't,
one thing to remember, he was honestly the most talented guy on the Wizards.
He was still the best player on the team.
Yeah, and he could have been considered old by athletic standards. But anyways, so yeah, that's those are things to look forward to with the Fedor return.
Yeah, keeping a close eye on Fedor.
Yeah, we'll definitely see how how that goes. So another thing I wanted to actually talk about is Mike Swick fought at UFC 189 and he lost, and he announced his retirement. I just wanted to browse over him really quickly because he's
take the floor.
He was another one of those original Ultimate Fighter contestants.
A season 1 alum?
Yeah, season 1 alum. I really do. Obviously, he's just one of those guys where he competed for the longest time, but unfortunately, he realized I'm not gonna get any better. I'm just gonna there's a chance I could keep taking beat down, so it's better to just call it right now.
There was a lot of buzz around him early in his career. Do you remember that?
Yeah, there was, because he another thing to remember, he was one of those guys who fought in multiple weight classes and then eventually found him, his place at welterweight. But he was, very nice guy, very, ambassador of the sport. I can't say anything but positive stuff about him. He was always well behaved. You never heard about him in the news. I don't remember hearing him saying profanity at all. He was one of the nicer guys in the show. If you watch some of those early episodes, like when Chris Lieben and Koscheck,
loudmouths up at the house.
Yeah, when all those guys were just going at it, he was kind of being an intermediary. He was kind of trying to play peacemaker and stuff like that. I can't say enough about the guy. It's it's
sad to see.
It's unfortunate to see him, especially go out on a loss. But it's great guy. I hope he has a I hope he can make a living or something like that. I hope he can be one of those guys who does commentary on Fox Sports 1. I'd hope that he'd be able to do that, or maybe get some kind of front office position, like maybe what Rich Franklin got or something like that.
And whatever the future holds, I feel like Mike Swick will always have, I think, and I can't remember against who it was, but it was his first fight after the
Ultimate Fighter.
After the Ultimate Fighter. I think it might have been for the event, right? It might have been for the finale event. He had what was it, like a 20-second knockout?
Something like that.
It's like a highlight reel knockout. It's what gave him the nickname Quick, yeah? And that'll always, nobody will ever be able to take away that from him. And that was in a time during the sport where I think that knockout was before even the Forrest Griffin, Stephan Bonner fight had happened, right?
Yeah, because that was
leading up to that fight.
Yeah,
right?
that was that fight. Believe it or not, was actually the co-main event. The main event
was Diego Sanchez and
no, that was before that. The main event was Rich Franklin versus Ken Shamrock.
People forget about that fight. Holy
was
moly!
Evan Tanner?
No, I think it.
Yeah,
I think it was Ken Shamrock.
Yes, it was Rich Franklin, Ken Shamrock. Because after that fight, Franklin went down, beat Evan Tanner, became the.
Oh yes, champion. And yes, that was Franklin at 205. Yes, and people forget about that fight.
Yeah,
interesting. And Franklin actually fought her first 2 or 3 fights. Going off now about Rich Franklin, he fought his first 2 or 3 fights at 205, didn't he?
Yeah, he was originally a 5-pounder, and then he decided, I'm going to try middleweight,
and he found great success.
Yeah, he found
Tanner, Loazu.
Yeah, and until he went up against a certain guy named Anderson.
Oh yes.
And the rest is history.
The rest is history.
Yeah, so that's that was that. So
fairly well, Mr. Swick.
Yep.
Best wishes.
Yep. Best wishes. Okay, so then the next one. So next topic. The UFC Fight Night Mir versus Duffy, which was just in San Diego. Unfortunately, neither of us were able to make it because I just had a busy schedule.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have, even if I'd filed the paperwork on time, I wouldn't have made it if I did. But I understand that a friend of mine, Amy Kaplan, who is who also covers MMA. My understanding is she went there in addition to going to International Fight Week. I hope you had a great time, Amy. So the main fight there was Mir versus Duffy, and my understanding is Mir actually beat Duffy by knockout. He's kind of going into...
When did this happen? Because I don't remember this happening.
Wednesday.
My goodness.
Apparently,
go on.
It seems like Mir's kind of on
an upswing in his career.
Yeah.
He was always a talented fellow, right? I mean,
yeah.
he was underrated, I think, but some losses were pretty brutal, and I think that sort of, swayed, fans, and I think even like people within the UFC. He's been let go from the UFC, I think, once or twice already.
Actually, he has not.
Really, never?
He got really close when he went on that, losing streak, but it's
impressive. It's impressive because he's been with the company since, I think, the first fight. I saw his first fight. It was or at least his first fight on a pay-per-view was against Tank Abbott. He beat him by a toe hold.
Yeah.
It's a great fight.
I should note that's the only toe hold submission
ever
in UFC. UFC history. That's the only toe hold submission win.
If I remember correctly, that was either the same night as when Randy Couture lost the belt because Vitor Belfort cut his eyelid.
Oh yeah.
Do you remember that? Or the night, or it could have been all the same night, or the same night Rico Rodriguez was knocked out by Tim Sylvia. Which, by the way, he brutalized Rico Rodriguez. I don't know if you remember that. He absolutely destroyed him.
Yeah.
But point is, he's been around forever, so it's incredible because everybody gets cut from the UFC.
Yeah. So it's amazing that he's been there, that he's been able to hold on to his job for as long as he has. I think.
But like you said, definitely on the rise again. Somehow.
Yeah, he beat Bigfoot Silva and he beat he just beat Duffy. And
Duffy was tough. He was a tough. I think most everybody probably would have, at least on paper and seeing the guy, probably would have gone for Duffy. It might not have been the right decision. Obviously, wasn't the right decision because Mir is the more experienced dude. But the baton's always being passed, and that definitely, when that main event was announced, that's definitely the impression that I was left with. Okay, this is the fight where Duffy kind of goes over the top and he could say that he's beat a UFC champion, and then we could all start seriously talking about how this kid might be, in contention now.
Yeah.
That's not going to happen.
Yeah.
At least not now.
Right now.
Yeah. So cool. Good for Frank Mir. Good to see a sort of, former however many time UFC heavyweight champion get a V.
And
kind of embarrassing. I didn't even know what happened.
Yeah. So and then the next topic we're going to talk about UFC Glasgow, which
Glasgow happening now, and the main event might be happening now.
Yeah, probably. It's taking place as we speak. That's for those of you who watch a tape delay. This or watch showing of this, that this is the time that's taking place. It's I think it's gonna be rebroadcast though on Fox Sports 1. I'm not sure exactly. It may be being broadcast right now, but I'm sure
it might be live.
Yeah, it's probably being broadcast live, but I'm sure it's also going to be
they'll play it
delayed.
again. Yes,
I'm sure it'll be tape delayed. But so yeah, there's but the implications there. The main event.
One second. The way I see it, since when this goes up, it's going to be done. Why not just go ahead and give the results right now?
Okay. Well, let's
Let me see if I could bring it up. But go ahead, talk about it while I try to bring it up.
So the main event being the main event that's going on right now.
Latest Bisping.
Latest Bisbane. Tally's latest once fought Anderson Silva for the belt, and that was during the very dull. That was during a very dull time.
That was terrible.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that was a terrible fight. Yeah, that was a 5-round snoozer.
Yeah,
Tallis latest spent like half of the fight on his back.
Yeah, that was the time when I think Silva was just starting to get bored and he was just starting to showboat and stuff like that, because the Cote fight, the Maya fight was also around that time. It was even before.
That one was sort of similar.
Yeah,
those were kind of the contenders, right? Those were the guys that were up.
Those were the contenders at the time. But
it was so boring. But I mean that sort of. I have certain issues. I take certain issues with how certain people perceive Anderson Silva's run in the middleweight division, specifically because of that. Because
he went through that dull streak
of really, nobody else.
Any major contenders, and him basically having to fight rather boring.
Yeah.
Not boring fighters.
Not boring fighters, but gentlemen, that it was really poor matchups for us.
Yeah, they just they were good fighters, but they went up against Anderson Silva.
It was the pure striker versus pure grapplers, and as a result, they were not going to try to get in on them, and he wasn't. They couldn't take the guy down. In the case of Talladleitis, he was happy with hoping that he was going to jump in at his guard. Talladleitis was happy with lying on the octagon mat and hoping that he was going to, jump into his guard.
Yeah, that was just that unfortunate trick. But he's there now, and of course we all know Michael Bisping, who's kind of been a middle of the road guy. Let's just be honest. He's kind of been a middle of the road.
Yeah, definitely. Gatekeeper is the stereotype, I think, among MMA fans, right?
Yeah, gatekeeper.
Yeah.
Would be the best way to describe him. He's
so,
a gatekeeper.
If it's okay with you, do you want me to start with the main event and sort of break it down there?
Has that happened?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, let's see that.
Sources say Michael Bisping is won by TKO punches. And give me a second. Sorry, actually, the round wasn't pulled up in the time, so give me 1 second. Evan Dunham also beat Ross Pearson. Joseph Duffy beat Avon George. Joanne Calderwood, beat Courtney Cassie.
I'm glad JoJo got a rebound.
Talk to me about that fight, the women's fight, please.
Okay. Joanne Calderwood, big prospect on the Ultimate Fighter 20. I still think she's got a chance at eventually earning a title shot, but she needed this win because she's coming off of a loss, and so she just she needed that win if she wanted to stay relevant. And there was the possibility of her facing Carla Esparza back when Esparza owned the belt. Mm-hmm. I honestly think she matches up pretty good against
oh gosh, oh goodness. I think we figured out how to say it. Joanna? Jednurzik? I don't know.
Let's just go with that.
We apologize.
Jed
We are just going with it. We shouldn't be. We'll figure out how to pronounce it correctly later. Yes. Joanna. We'll call her Joanna.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Joanna's the champ. JoJo's the Scottish prospect.
Got it.
So yeah, I think they match well because they're both tall
If I remember
Muay
correctly,
Thai specialist.
if I remember correctly, JoJo is she has short hair, kind of just over her head, and she's Scottish. She had Conor McGregor visit her.
Yeah.
Okay. She seemed very tough.
Actually, Conor McGregor visited Aisling Daly, but because they're both from the British Isles, they sympathized, and Conor McGregor said hi to her.
Okay. That's very nice of him. That seemed very nice of him.
Yeah,
that was a very sweet moment. I remember watching.
Well, the reason why Conor swung in and say hi to Aisling is because they're teammates, and of course, Aisling's alone in the Ultimate Fighter house and having to adjust and stuff like that. So he just pops up out of nowhere.
That's awesome. That is awesome. Yeah. So, and it would seem until I find out what round it was in that Bisping won by TKO. So what does that mean, and what do you think?
Let's see. I think it means Bisping could. It means job security for the time being. I remember reading that Bisping was still hoping at an eventual title shot. Let's face it, he's not going to beat Chris Weidman. There was no way in hell that he was going to beat Anderson Silva. He's not going to beat Chris Weidman.
Yeah.
That's just not going to happen.
Yeah, I doubt that.
He should. Because remember, even though Weidman has proven himself on his feet, his bread and butter is his wrestling. He's going to take him down, and he's just going to ground and pound him brutally. We've seen him brutally ground and pound several guys. The recent of which was Vitor Belfort, and he would just do that again. So it's just I just don't think. Well, part of Bisping's problem, he's always been a striker, and we've seen him at times try to utilize grappling, but he just doesn't have that base. He's no George St. Pierre. He can't incorporate that on a whim.
No.
George St. Pierre was this freak athlete who had a striking karate background, but because of how much of a freak athlete he was, he could incorporate wrestling into his game very quickly. I
feel like Bisping's style of fighting, he should have stuck to the sort of kickboxing or traditional Muay Thai style. And this is, again, armchair analysis, literally. He just didn't ever seem like the sort of guy that, for that style, because his style was pure striker, really. Have you ever seen Michael Bisping really generate tons of power? No. Right? And he's kind of quick, but he's sort of peppering them out there. He's not really nailing them with anything,
He's not really a powerful fighter.
And if you're a striker, you want to be powerful.
Yeah, like we were talking about, Dan Henry, he's kind of more of a Nate Diaz type fighter in that. Yeah, you talked about he was peppering. Nate Diaz,
but at least Nate Diaz could do that and then transition into some grappling.
Yeah, those two have knocked people out, but it's been far and in between. They mostly do, peppering. We're talking, the last show we were talking about how Bisping got knocked out brutally by Dan Henderson. Dan Henderson's a wrestler, and he
that, I feel like that was sort of a revealing moment. Like that was when we found out. That was when we as MMA fans found out, like how kind of bad Bisping was, right?
Not just that, what kind of quality chin he had, because until that.
Well, you never know if maybe Dan Henderson's punch will do that to even the most, because Dan Henderson is that.
Well, he did.
It's the H-bomb.
Well, he did knock out Fedor. But yeah, that's.
And I don't think we haven't seen Bisping knocked out cold like that since. I'm scanning my memory.
I would say no. It's been mostly TKO victories.
But to me, it was more how can somebody who says that they're a striker, who says that they practice striking all the time, essentially get have the most. That was just the most perfect punch landed on his face.
Yeah. Square
on his jaw. That to me seems like if your only job is, okay, this guy's a wrestler, I'm a striker, I have to outstrike him. If that's your only concern, you can't get knocked out. And he got knocked out violently, like we talked about last week.
But I don't.
By the way, I rescind my announcement of the TKO victory. There's nothing that I've seen that indicates that he's won by TKO, so I apologize for that. I don't know how that happened.
But it's possible that.
But I'm correct about everything else.
Yeah. So, Yeah. So there's it's like it's in all honesty, both those guys I think have kind of been middle of the road fighters. It's just that I think latest just at that time when the middleweight division was just so weak was the guy who was able to build himself into a title shot. It could have very easily been Michael Bisping, who could have built himself into a title shot like that. We saw Nate Marquardt build himself into a title shot. We saw Damian Maia build himself into a title shot. We see Lydis build himself into a title shot. Cote, we saw these. In reality, mediocre guys. A lot of those guys are down at welterweight now.
But Cote was short notice, and he actually made that an entertaining fight, didn't he?
Yeah, he actually did chase down.
Yeah, he had nerve.
Yeah,
he lost, but
and it's embarrassing how he lost. He tweaked his knee the wrong.
Oh yes, that's unfortunate.
Yeah. It would have been interesting to see how that fight would have gone if he continued, though. Definitely.
Evan Dunham beats Ross Pearson by decision, unanimous.
Okay.
What do you think? That sound about right to you?
Yeah. Pearson. I really hate to say this, but UK fighters for the most part are primarily strikers.
Okay. I don't disagree.
Name. Correct me if I'm wrong. Name one.
Michael Bisping, Conor McGregor. Well, okay, that is a grappler. Give me a second. I could.
Or has grappling in his game.
Yeah. Give me a second.
Enough grappling in his game to actually make him well-rounded. Let me think. I can't think of anybody.
You're probably right, and I never given it that thought. I guess.
I just cannot. Well, and it's kind of ironic considering how at the turn of the century, when the Olympics first started, most of the Olympic wrestlers were British.
Really?
And since then, it's just.
That's incredible.
Well, remember that by the 1950s, the dominant forces in wrestling were the Soviets and the Eastern Europeans, and the Americans.
So you mean at the turn of the century in the 1900s?
Yeah.
Oh well, I mean you can.
It's very easy for a culture of something like that to change over the course of a century or even 50 years, like I said.
And also, you don't know that because of sort of other. Socio or political reasons. Some of their really good wrestlers might not have actually been British because there were maybe they were able to recruit talent from other places.
Oh right, the British Empire.
That's
the British Empire. They could have easily fit somebody.
This guy's British and he's in wherever, So
India.
Yeah, exactly. So there are a bunch of different factors. So no, maybe and if you're saying that by the 1950s they were already sort of nobodies, then yeah, maybe they're sort of, and I feel like boxing is sort of big over there, right? And I think maybe to a certain degree, kickboxing is sort of big in Europe. I don't know if it's big in the UK.
It is because you had guys. There's French Savate, and there's to a degree, certain types of kickboxing were imported from what's it called, from China to there. So it is that boxing and kickboxing are pretty popular in Europe.
So people want to bang there,
Yeah, but there are the if there's any place in Europe that's grappling prone, it's definitely the Eastern European countries. We obviously saw that. Because there's the Samba, there's all those wrestlers and stuff like that. We obviously saw that with Fedor. He just grew up in a culture where grappling was just part of your pedigree. It was just incorporated into your education and stuff like that. So.
Yeah, most definitely.
There's a reason why Russia still takes a majority of the gold medals in most wrestling world championships and Olympics.
Well, if I remember correctly, too, everybody over there is required to do military service for a certain amount of time, and I think they get maybe some training of that for their militaries. I don't know if it's military service specifically being deployed or anything like that, but they have to, I think, join the military. They have to do like a year of it or something like
Russia?
that. I think so. Might be wrong. Might be full of crap.
I know that in South Korea, if you're a guy, you're required to do 2 years.
I don't think it's not unprecedented.
Which is why the Korean Zombie is not active right now.
Because he had to go do that.
Yeah, he had to do that before. You have to do that mandatory service before the age of 30. He was, I think, 27 when he had. He'd been doing it and he'd been putting it off. He needed to go do that. So,
if I remember correctly, Mexico has I don't think it's military, but Mexico has a similar thing where before the age of 20-something, you have to do. It's essentially it's like free government work for a certain amount of time. Very strange. We're very fortunate to be in this country.
Yeah.
Anyway, but I'm not sure if anything that I said about the Russian military is correct, but I do remember, I think, hearing that. And I at the very least,
I know that in Israel, regardless of the gender, you are required to serve. Well, look at that country, and they're surrounded by.
Let's not get into geopolitics so much, but yes. Well, yeah, that's correct. You're right.
You are required.
You have to be vigilant
by law in Israel. Once I forget what the age is. I don't remember if it's 18 or 20.
Regardless of whether you're a male or female.
Yeah, I don't know how long it's been. I don't know how long it's been the bi-gender rule, but yeah, if you're a living, breathing human being,
Krav Maga.
Yeah, that's which I'm kind of surprised that Krav Maga hasn't been more prominent in MMA
because it's like to kill you, and it's also like I think you incorporate weapons.
Yeah, that's true.
It's like I'm supposed to be able to break this mug right now, stab you in the neck.
In those early days of back when they were doing the tournaments in the UFC, I think I did see one or two
Krav Magas.
Yeah, Israeli Krav Maga fighters. But
I gotta search those and find those. I just remember. Oh goodness, what was his name? The first karate guy, the white dude with the long hair. What was his name? Do you remember who I'm talking about?
I know who you're talking about. I just remember I could remember who it was.
Anyway,
I do know that I do think I remember though that in that fight where he lost. Wait, are we talking about Keith Hackney? No, we're not. No, he didn't have long hair. We're talking about the guy with the goatee, right?
Yes. I can't remember his name.
I can't remember remember his name.
He lost to Gracie though, right? He lost.
He may have lost to a Gracie, but the fight that I'm thinking of, there was this fight where John McCarthy was reffing. I've seen this video, and I've posted it multiple times in my my articles. But there's this video, where they interviewed John McCarthy, and he talked about how in those early days, the ref actually theoretically did not have the authority to stop the fight. So John McCarthy instructed all the fighters' corners, you better be ready to throw in the towel because if your fighter's down there, he's gonna get mauled.
Understood.
That same guy was getting mauled, I'd like to say, by Pat Smith, and the guy said he's telling whoever we're talking about, the guy's corner, throw in the towel.
He's asking his own corner to throw in the towel.
No. John McCarthy is telling the guy to.
He's done. Like your fighter's done.
Yeah,
throw in the towel.
Yeah, but of course, there's back when you could throw in the towel, a lot of fighters would tell their corners,
don't. You better not. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he's telling him don't throw in the. He's telling the guy's corner to throw in the towel, and according to John McCarthy, the guys threw the towel into the audience. And he's yelling, throw in the towel! And Pat Smith hears this and thinks that John McCarthy is
saying
stopping
he threw
the fight.
Okay, got it.
So he walks, if you watch that fight, he walks away, and that's when the fight did stop. Because the guy, he just
but it wasn't John McCarthy stopping the fight.
Yeah, after that event, he talked with was it Horion?
Yeah.
Yeah, I talked to Horion Gracie, and he was able to. After that event, he was able to actually stop the fight.
Yeah.
Because remember, John McCarthy, I like to say from it was either UFC 2 or 3. He was the mainstay for years.
Yes, he was all the way.
And he was actually
60 or 70 or something like that.
UFC he was actually one of the refs, one of the people who actually helped developed the unified rules of MMA, which is still used
today.
Yeah, he was one of the original people who came up who
Help
helped
develop
develop that rule set. But okay.
So what do you think, Matt? We're closing in.
Yeah. So let's talk about the major event for this next week.
What's going on?
UFC on Fox. Dillashaw vs. Barao. This is the third UFC on Fox, and it's the rematch between TJ Dillashaw and Renan Barao is finally taking place, and that goes back to just. This is that fight where people, get to finally ask the question, was that a fluke or not?
When Dillashaw
beat Barao. And the way I'm going to look at it is this. I don't know if Barao just didn't have it in his head, but you just would have thought, that with the,
get your act together, young man. Parched. While he chews on that ice. So is this a title bout? If you all don't know, I'm not super familiarized with the lower weight divisions. Anything under 155, I have a hard time with because I didn't really follow those before.
Yes, this is a title bout.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is for the bantamweight title.
Okay.
And so I was about to say before I started choking.
Yeah.
And, my
definitely started choking.
This for people who say that fight was a fluke, with a guy like Renan Barao who'd been through the number of fights that he'd been through, I think that he probably would have had time to actually mentally recover, but it just didn't seem that It just honestly seemed that Dillashaw was actually in control of the entire fight.
I saw highlights of that fight, and Barao was getting hammered and beat to the punch every second, and Joe Rogan was losing his mind.
Yeah.
He was losing his mind.
Especially at the end when when the fight finally got stopped. So, but, for critics, we finally get to see once and for all if that indeed was a fluke or whether that.
And if it's a good one, if we get a rubber match, and that's,
But yeah.
What else can we ask for?
Yep, definitely. So, and then.
If Barao wins.
Yeah, so, if that. And then, but another question after that would be who would Dillashaw fight next, and a lot of people have been throwing out Dominic Cruz, except that he's injured again. I don't know when he'll be back in. Maybe he'll be back in time for another.
And this is assuming that Dillashaw wins.
Yeah. Well, even if Barao wins, still maybe even Cruz facing Barao, because that was that original fight that was supposed to take place, and then and then Barao got
this and that's happened.
Yeah, this and that happened. So yeah, there's that. That's the main event for UFC on Fox. Co-main event: Miesha Tate versus Jessica Eye.
Okay. Miesha,
or Jessica Evil Eye, as she is.
Is that her nickname?
Yes, that's
a clever nickname.
Yes, that she definitely.
Evil Eye.
So, supposedly the winner of this fight is going to be next in line for the title shot, assuming that Cyborg does not actually. Actually, if you really think about it, Cyborg actually is going to have to fight that one fight at bantamweight.
So even.
It's either going to be before or after that fight were to happen, if theoretically it did happen. But in terms of Miesha Tate,
I was gonna say, wouldn't this be like her 7th fight with Ronda Rousey if she were to
her 3rd? This would be the trilogy, and it's just
the trilogy of losses.
Yeah, and it's to give her credit, she did make it to the 3rd round. She has gone further with Ronda Rousey
than anybody,
and it's because she had that previous experience with her, and she's claiming that she could do it. She could take it even further. But the real question is, would that really be the case or not? But we'll just have to see. Now, on the other hand, Jessica Eye, she's been one of those prospects. I can't remember how many fight winning streaks she's on right now. I do know that right before she had a controversial loss to Alexis Davis, and That was actually the fight that earned Alexis Davis the title shot.
Okay.
Again, in which she went up against Rousey and got massacred in 12 seconds.
Yeah, that was the old judo throw and punches to the face. Yes.
Yeah, that was very, very, very.
That was a violent one. Yeah.
And there were a lot of people, including myself, and this just goes again, my disagreement with the judges, but
you thought I should have won that fight.
I thought I should have won that fight. I don't think Davis did enough to win that fight, but obviously, as I said, judges didn't agree with me, as they have multiple times not agreed with me before. So
you're not the only one on that book.
Yeah.
So you're hoping maybe I'm
hoping I wins this fight just because of the fact that
would make just if it puts her up against Rousey, makes it a more interesting fight than Tate already. A new fight.
Even though Rousey Tate, obviously they're gonna push each other's buttons. Maybe that'd be good for the popularity. But other than that, I don't think that's really. Yeah, I don't see a whole lot of marquee value in that fight. Then another televised fight for you'll see on Fox: Edson Barboza versus Chris Felder. Barboza to me has just kind of been a middle of the range lightweight for the most part, whereas Chris Felder, on the other hand, he's actually had some good highlight reel knockouts, in my opinion, since the beginning of the year. So I think that's gonna be a good fight.
And maybe keeps it going.
Yeah, and then we have Joe Lozon versus
Takanori Gomi.
Yep,
that's the one we just saw.
Yeah, so the two veterans.
They put on exciting fights.
Yeah, and Gomi, obviously, he was the only Pride lightweight champion. So he
was.
Yeah, so he's he's fighting.
Though he did lose, by the way, during his reign to Marcus Aurelius.
Yes, and then
to Diaz.
No, he avenged his loss to Aurelius, and then he lost to Diaz.
Okay.
And then I think shortly after that, the Pride got bought out.
And the Diaz fight was a non-title fight.
Yeah, it was a non-title fight.
Okay, go on.
Not to mention afterwards, Diaz tested positive for weed. Yeah. The thing about Pride, when Pride held events in Japan,
it was anything goes.
Yeah, it was anything goes. They didn't test for anything. It's someone could have walked in there juiced up on roids. Some people, as we saw from the Smashing Machine documentary,
it was sort of shameless almost.
Yeah, it was kind of shameless almost. In fact, and I also heard from some sources that Ensign Inoue's contract specifically said there was going to be no testing. So. But when they decided to start holding events in the U.S. and they always held them in Las Vegas,
Thomas and Mack Center.
Yeah, Thomas and Mack Center. They had the athletic in order
the Nevada State Athletic Commission.
Yeah, they were within that jurisdiction. They had to submit to not again.
You need to get your inhaler? While he chews on that ice. Gomi and Lozon should be all right. Lozon's got big ears.
I don't have asthma, by the way. That was a joke from him.
Yes.
About the inhaler, but
not about the big ears, though. Serious about that.
Yeah, he does have big ears. That's genetically big ears. Okay. So
that's what's coming down the pipe.
Yeah, so that's what's coming down the pipe. Do you have anything for this day in MMA history?
So last week I accidentally teased that today in MMA history and did not. I actually don't have any article lined up, though I do think I'm gonna go ahead and run with the champion versus champion piece. I think I might do something on that. Pretty much just comparing how many and objectively, without really too much, just sort of going down the list of how many champion versus champion matches we've had in the last however many years compared to how many there had been maybe since its inception all the way until this point.
And if you're gonna do that, you might also want to incorporate those the unification bouts that have happened over the course of
including the Pride ones and so on.
Yeah, the Pride ones, and there was kind of an unofficial.
Who would it have been?
The WC ones.
Like there was like the Condit GSP or something like that. Would that have kind of technically been one?
That was technically not one because Condit had already been in the UFC for a while. I was talking. There was actually this one.
Who would it have been?
Dominic Cruz, when his last fight in the WEC, it was not only to defend his WEC bantamweight championship, it was also for the UFC bantamweight championship. That was the last fight before they were gonna. I'd say that was probably the only actual WEC unification bout.
But was that the vacant UFC?
Yeah, that was for the vacant UFC bantamweight championship.
Okay.
So that was the official. That was kind of an official merge, and of course, obvious. The lightweights obviously they own their lineage to those early WEC bouts, but yeah. Anyway, so I'd recommend that. The Pride belts, Rampage fought Dan because Dan Henderson had the Pride welterweight, middleweight, and welterweight.
Well, it was welterweight and middleweight, which was in our divisions.
Light heavyweight, and middleweight.
Yes.
Because he had that, he automatically got title shots.
Two title shots back to back, right?
Yeah,
even after he lost, he got another title shot right away.
At light heavyweight and then at middleweight.
Yeah.
So that would technically also count.
Yeah.
I guess you could technically say Gilbert Melendez, Benson Henderson, because Gilbert Melendez came in from Strikeforce
as the champion
and got a title shot. Right?
Okay, then yes, that would be one. Yeah.
So yeah, those
sort of I could include them as because really what I would want to do is focus on is interim champion versus champion.
Yeah, you could definitely do that. But those are just suggestions.
No, those are definitely mentions. They're mentioned. They're definitely things I should mention.
Well, yeah, if you want to put like a mentions section, but obviously.
And I always love your contributions.
Yeah, obviously.
I do.
Oh, thank you. Obviously, it's your article. It's just you do whatever you want. But
how's about you? What you got lined up?
Okay, so two things. First of all, I'm gonna mention top 10 in a little bit. What I'm gonna do for this week's top 10, but I'm also gonna announce that I will. I did this last year as well. On the MMA forum, I'm going to post a thread that'll be official voting, and basically it's the viewer's choice, the members' choice, because I've been on the MMA forum actually since long before MMA Freak even existed. But I'm going to post a thread there, and it's going to be the official vote for my top 10 lists of the past year. I should have done this way earlier, but just because life and stuff like that, I got busy.
Yeah.
So probably within the next day or so, I'm going to post a thread and it's going to be in the general MMA section for the top 10 lists in MMA. So if you're seeing this, go ahead and register for the MMA forum, and feel free to go ahead and vote for that, vote in that, and I will post a link to just my top 10s in the thread, and obviously you can go there and you could look at which of my top 10 lists that I've done for the past years, exclude rankings. You could look at them for the past year. So it's 2015. We're voting on all the lists in 2014. So look at those, the top 10 that you like, list those. I'm as a member of the forum, I'm going to take the time to actually look at them and vote for what I think were my top 10 lists. But ultimately, it's up to the viewer who does that. But so there's that. Like I said, MMA. It's
get on there and vote.
It's called www.mmaforum.com.
MMAforum.com. Register and vote.
Yes. And so for my top 10 list, and this is an older one that's kind of been just waiting in the pipeline.
And what do you think? You want to wrap it up with the top 10 lists?
Yeah, I'll wrap it up for the top 10.
All right.
So this is the top 10 Good Samaritans in MMA.
Let's do it.
That's what I will be doing. So
this is coming up. You will be posting this.
Yes, I will.
Forthcoming. Good Samaritans, number 10.
Yeah. So number 10 is actually going to be John Jones, because
How are you being ironic? Go on. I'm listening.
Well, the only reason why he makes it on this list is because he did 2 deeds.
Go on.
And he would have been number 1 if it hadn't been for his
troubles.
Yeah, his recent troubles.
So that knocked him all the way down.
Yeah, that knocked him all the way down to number 10.
But we're not really moralizing. He's a young man. He's gonna make mistakes, right? He'll come back. He'll be better, hopefully.
Yeah. So.
Go on though. Number 10.
So number 10, what he did to that would qualify him as a good Samaritan is, number 1, he there was this one time where he actually paid for a woman.
This was reported in the news?
Yeah, there was a homeless woman. I think she had a kid, and he, out of his good heart, paid for this woman to have a hotel room out of pocket.
It's incredible.
Or something along those lines. That's number 1. Number 2, before a fight, he and his coaches, so Greg Jansen and I think John Winklejohn was also there. They actually helped
Mike Winklejohn, I think.
Yeah, Mike Winklejohn.
Continue.
But they actually helped stop a perpetrator who stole a woman's purse and he was trying to run away with it.
Oh my gosh!
They chased him down and subdued him.
They must have walloped him.
Yeah. So there was that. So that's number 10. Number 9 is Cathal Pendred, who was actually fighting at UFC 189.
Okay.
Around the time that they were actually broadcasting season 19 of The Ultimate Fighter, actually no, it was season 21 of The Ultimate Fighter.
Go on.
It was reported that he actually helped save a baby. I can't remember if it was a porpoise or a dolphin, but he was at a beach and this either porpoise or dolphin was getting caught on the rocks and getting beat around and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. He actually went and lifted the dolphin out of this shallow water and brought it to deeper water so that the thing could swim away. And not
incredible. That is very nice.
Yes, that is.
Number 8.
Okay, number 8. Number 8 is this guy named Mayara Dusunake.
Mayara Dusunake.
Yeah, but what he did was he's a lower level MMA fighter. He may even still be on the amateur circuit, but his day job, he works at a convenience store. Okay. Guys try to rob the convenience store. Guess what he does? He whoops out his MMA and just whoops these guys. And one of the guys ran away. The other left his partner, and he just, he beat this guy down. And the guy was just lying in a heap on the ground. And occasionally, the guy starts to get up, you just kick him back down.
Oh wow!
So that's that. Number 7.
Courageous.
Yeah. Number 7, Team Quest.
As the whole.
Yeah, and
they're good Samaritans.
Yeah, so this goes back to the infamous Nashville Brawl.
Okay.
At Strikeforce Nashville. So,
okay.
So we all know what happened. Jason Mayhem Miller came in, interrupted Jake Shields' post-fight interview, and the Scrap Pack Crazy Fighters all get pissed off and gang up on him and start to just beat him down. And so there's 3 types of people who you could see breaking up the trying to get a hold of the Scrap Pack. Number 1 is the Strikeforce security. Number 2 is the state commission officials. Number 3 are the red shirts of Team Quest. Dan Henderson had just lost. These guys had no obligation whatsoever to get involved. But they're peeling these guys off to just stop them from beating down Jason Miller out of the goodness of their own hearts. They didn't have to get involved at all. So
well, nobody, and it would have been easy to Jason. I mean, don't get me wrong. Mayhem Miller's a funny guy, nice guy, loudmouth though. So it would have been easy for them to be like, well, that's when we should have stayed out of it and just left.
Yeah.
That's nice. That is nice of them.
Yes, they easily could have just darted right out of the.
That is very nice of them.
Yeah, they did. They easily just could have darted right out of the out of the arena and just not
See ya, mayhem.
Yeah, but he's actually. I think he's in prison right now.
That's unfortunate. Yeah, he had a breakdown there.
Breakdown. Well, he was always kind of mentally just on the edge.
Yeah.
But anyways,
Number 6.
Number 6, Leslie Smith. So what happened was Leslie Smith is out with a girlfriend. They're they're just out having a good time, and this dude apparently decides to go and grab her girlfriend's butt. So she goes and says, "You owe my friend an apology." The guy says, "No." Obviously, he doesn't realize he's talking to a professional MMA fighter, so she just lays the smackdown on this guy.
Holy moly, that's embarrassing and unfortunate. And that's what he gets for being a freaking slime ball.
Yeah, that's...
Goodness gracious.
Yeah. So, and then number 5 is Chris Weidman.
Middleweight champion, UFC middleweight champion Chris Weidman.
Yeah, so I forget how long ago this... Well, what he primarily did was when Staten Island got hit by... Was it Hurricane Sandy? Well, he but he started
Sandy,
yeah.
East Coast.
He used that. He used. Obviously, he's from Staten Island, and he helped create. He helped the charity Staten Strong, and it was just helping people, helping his hometown that just got wrecked.
Philanthropy,
so,
very nice of him.
So that's that. Numero
4
is Nick Ring. Nick Ring, he was in the UFC at one point, but there was this time when I think he was just staying in shape. He's leaving a yoga fight. These guys just out of nowhere started assaulting this couple when he's at a bus stop, and he just gets back into action. They grab the girl's purse, and he just starts bolting it after these guys and just starts laying the smackdown on these guys because they don't know who they're dealing with.
And this should be, by the way, so far some of these stories, let it be a lesson to any of you all that are listening. Don't be a tough guy, especially if you're not a tough guy, because you don't know if the guy standing across from you is a tough guy. Go on.
Yeah, so number 3, I never got these guys' names. I'm going to look it up before I do the actual article, but I just labeled these as the hotel guys. So a few years back, there's this guy who decides to rob a hotel clerk in a hotel lobby at gunpoint. Well, guess who happened to walk through? These two MMA fighters who are in town for a grappling tournament.
No, you're saying unnamed. So these could have been like aspiring or amateur MMA fighters.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna look it up and track their names down so I could actually list them by name.
Okay.
But so these guys,
there's some sort of tournament or event going on in the area.
Yeah,
these guys are trying to rob a hotel that they're staying in.
Yeah, so this guy goes in and tries to, he wants the money. These guys, even though this guy's holding a gun, use their MMA skills to subdue him.
That's incredible.
And I think one of the guys put him in a rear naked choke, but they held him down until the cops got there.
Very scary.
So that's number 3. Number 2, Roger Huerta. There was this one time where
I remember this. Continue.
So there's this one time, I'd like to say it was in Texas, which would make sense because he's from Texas. There's this one time where outside of a Texas a bar, this guy starts assaulting a woman.
Oh my goodness, go on.
Huerta doesn't take kindly to this.
Oh, there's video of this.
Yes.
You should post it.
Yeah.
You should continue.
Yeah, but he doesn't take kindly to this.
No.
And he, not only does he beat the guy down, when the guy's down on the ground, he stomps the guy's head.
It's bad.
Yeah.
I mean, yes.
My understanding is this guy was the guy responsible for assaulting the woman was also like an ex-NFL player or something like that. So Huerta's a lightweight.
He's a very small dude,
and he beat down this guy who's probably at least 200 pounds.
That's how the cookie crumbles when you've trained your life to do that.
And then number 1, Guy Metzger.
Guy Metzger,
this is my favorite.
Lions Den alum,
Yeah.
Guy Metzger.
So
This is awesome.
And this actually takes place, after his fighting days. But,
Okay.
So Metzger, he pulls up to this bar, and outside, similar situation, this guy's is beating this woman. He shows up, and the bystanders are just laughing at the situation, and he's like, "No!" He gets out of his car, walks over, tells the guy to stop.
Mm-hmm.
The guy starts getting smart with him, knocks him out.
That's it.
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't
There's more.
It doesn't end there. He calls the cops.
Okay. He does.
He does.
Metzger does.
While he's waiting for the cops to get here, the guy gets up again, knocks him out a second time. Third time, the guy gets up, and this time he slashes at Metzger with a knife.
Oh,
I've actually seen the pictures. He
my gosh.
actually got some ligaments.
You have
sliced.
to get that picture on there.
I'm not sure if I want to get that particular picture. Oh, yeah, maybe.
Or a link to it, like, hey, squeamish.
Yeah.
Go on.
So he doesn't even realize he's been cut.
Well, yeah.
Third time knocks the
gosh.
guy out, and he just so happens to knock the guy out when the cops are getting there. So they're thinking he's the one. But things got straightened out. Things got straightened out. But he
Yeah, he definitely. Wow.
I definitely think.
Hey,
that,
this is an awesome list.
I definitely think that a guy who's willing to take a slash
definitely
for a woman,
a well-earned number 1.
It just goes to show you chivalry is not dead, especially in the top 2 areas.
Yes, and there's a lot of that going on right now. So that I think that this is a very nice article. I think that it's going to be a really nice list, especially with what's been going on in sports lately with the domestic violence and the football and whatnot.
Yeah, it just goes to the top 2 at least just goes to show the opposite could be very, very much true.
Exactly. That people do care, essentially.
Yes, people do care.
Awesome, awesome list. I'm looking forward to it, and it'll be up. It'll be up soon.
Yeah, within the next few days.
Awesome. Heck yeah. Alrighty. Well, I mean, I got nothing else. I don't know if you got something else.
I would say I got nothing else. So, okay. So thank you for watching, and we'll be back to you. I'm not sure if we'll be in studio or whether we'll be or we talked about actually doing an actual hangout instead of doing a broadcast.
However,
a hangout is a broadcast, but either we'll be live or we'll be on
but we will be.
We will be. So definitely next week sometime, but. We'll definitely come back to you.
Give me your Twitter handle.
Okay, my Twitter handle is at Matthew Salzer. And Edson?
Mine is at Edson_V.
And the MMA Freak handle is at MMA Freakout. And also I still can't remember what Hef's.
We should have all of those on hand for next time.
We should have all of those on hand. I also should probably remember Amy, even though she's not a contributor to the site. She's still someone who contributes to MMA news. So I should probably get her Twitter handle as well.
But this is a podcast for MMA-Freak.com.
Yep.
And if anybody wants to find anybody, we're all on that site. All contributors, and sign us off.
Okay. Thank you, and keep fighting, everybody.